Welcome to People Love Process. We all know vector art is clean, flat, and hard-edged. So in this movie, I'll show you how you can add a nice graininess to your vector artwork or design and give it some organic flair. Now, we're also going to quickly create object-oriented patterns that utilize effects and then compose them with our artwork using linear gradients and opacity masks. We have a lot to cover, so let's dive into it. This is a fun one. We're covering a bunch of different topics in this one movie, but it just shows you how all these various features and methods can all work together and be used in one solitary composition. Now, as you know, my process starts with drawing. This is my symmetrical sketch here. Not perfect. You can see the bottom and the branch itself is kind of leaning, not exactly straight. That's okay, because I always take this, bring it into Photoshop, and kind of clean up those areas. So if I show you this image, this is what it looks like after I bring it into Photoshop after scanning it on my flatbed scanner. And this still isn't perfect. I want this kind of this archway of the window to be a perfect circle. It almost looks like a surfboard, but that's okay. We're going to be building with shapes and using strokes. This can be very crude, very rough, but it can serve the purpose of creating our vector art. So it'll still give us all that information to become a roadmap for vector building. And that's why I think drawing is one of the best habits you can get into. You don't have to become a full-blown illustrator, but it's going to improve your design because it'll improve the look and feel before you even start building. And not to say you won't make changes as you go. And if you look closely at my sketch here, the head top looked different, but I thought it looked a little more kind of, what do you call the word for a circle and a square that go together, squircle or whatever it's called. Astute has one of their features on their dynamic corners is, I think they call it a squircle. So I kind of squircled the top of his head, so it's not perfect, but you can see the archway is now a perfect arch. Once again, this is all strokes. This leads to the base black and white artwork. Everything here is strokes except the Starry Night elements and the eyes themselves. Those are just fills, no strokes. But it all comes down to determining what size of stroke I want this to be. Now, I use keyboard shortcuts all the time, so if I want to adjust all these strokes, instead of selecting each individual stroke here, that takes too long. It's easier just to select one of the elements, and in this case, I'm going to go, we'll go Option F1, and it'll select all the same stroke colors. So that's a keyboard shortcut I've had set up probably not as long as my other ones, but for about 5 years now, and I use it all the time. Because it's faster. If you can do it through a pull-down menu, but once again, it's hidden in the pull-down menu. You have to select it, go under Select, go down to Same, go over here, and go down to Stroke Color, and notice it's Option F2 to select it like that, and you can select all of those. So that's how it works. It's just faster to select this and use my keyboard shortcut rather than go into a pull-down menu. If you want to know more about keyboard shortcuts and taking routine methods that you might use all the time and speeding up your workflow, watch my Creating with Keyboard Shortcuts. It comes with the free chapter of my book in the exercise files and a guide to show you all the keyboard shortcuts I use on a daily basis, including this one. And it'll speed up your process. So once we have all these strokes, I have to determine the thickness. And so on this one, I want it to be 6, like that. And I think this is going to look good once I expand it. So obviously, I would expand all these so they're not based off of strokes. They turn them into shapes. You've seen me do that in other videos. So we're just going to jump to the base coloring. All of these, again, have been expanded. So the only thing black is this background shape. Everything on top are islands of white that we're going to color. Now, one thing I'll tell you is right now I'm using the latest version of Adobe Illustrator 2024. Now, I believe by the time Max rolls around, which is about a month out from now, they're going to be revealing a feature that I consulted on, and that is dragging swatches to the desktop so you can tile stuff as you show in here. These are just vector shapes. There's a beta release out that I was notified of this week where they have the first release of that beta feature. Now, it's not out to the public, but if you have beta access, you can check it out. I haven't had time to do that. I'm trying to prepare for 2 workshops I have to do next week. And so I haven't even checked it out myself. A friend of mine did and asked me what I thought. And I told him, hey, I haven't had time to check it out. And I go, can you describe how it is? And the way he describes it, not exactly how I told him I think it should work. So I'll reserve my judgment until I can check it out myself. But just be aware that you'll be able to do something similar to this. How well it will work? Well, I have no control over that. But it's coming, so that's kind of good. So let's go ahead and select this. We'll use the eyedropper tool. I'm going to have most of the owl an orange color, but notice on all the colors we're using here, the bottom right-hand triangle, this denotes global color. Why is that important? Because if I select this is our base color, and I go to the color palette, I can create a tint. That's what this T stands for. But it only happens if you use global colors. Well, on this design, I want tints. I have a tint to 75, a tint to 55, and a tint to 35. And I'm going to color the rest of my design utilizing those tints. So the next one I will do is I'll go up here. The top of his head, we'll make this 75. Then I'll go to the bags under his eyes. We'll make this 50 like that. And then the bottom one will be a lighter tint. We'll do the top of his brow shape on his head. We'll do that at 55. And then down below, we'll start darker. They'll start 75. Then we'll do these two. That'll be 55. And the top, since it's closer to the light source, will be the lighter. And we'll do these down here, 75. And we'll do 55 on the bottom. His beak, the moon, and his feet will be this soft yellow. The background's going to be this nice dark teal. And then, of course, the leaves will be this green. So that's how I colored this design. But now I want to create some simple object-oriented patterns and show you some things about patterns have changed a little bit over the last year and a half, 2 years. And it's made it easier for people who don't create patterns all the time. The one thing you don't want to use is grid repeat. Just avoid that like the plague because it doesn't actually create a reusable resource that creates a pattern swatch. That's why you don't want to use that. I'm going to show you how to create simple object-oriented patterns. So let's turn on this layer. We're going to zoom in quite a bit because we're creating some small patterns. Oops, that's a little too far. We'll select this stroke. We're going to color it this blue color, and because it's a tint, we're going to go into the color palette, and I'm going to set this to 80% tint of that blue because we're going to be using it on the background color of the blue in our overall artwork. Now that I have that the tint color selected, I'll select this. We're going to go to the appearance panel with this object selected. You can see it's 1 point. We're going to click on effects. We'll go to distort and transform, and we'll go to zigzag. Now, this name, zigzag, I remember growing up riding my bike down to the convenience store to buy baseball cards or whatever. And it was, come to find out later, is basically a head shop too. And they always sold zigzag papers for rolling your own doobies. Okay, a little sidetrack there. Just every time I see that name, that's what I think about. Okay, so size. You want to make sure it's on absolute. We want to do smooth. We don't want to do this kind of mountaintop look. We want it to be a wave of sorts. I want the ridge amount to be, instead of 4, we're going to do 5 like that. And this is too high. I want it to be kind of a subtle wave. So we're going to knock this down to 3.5 like that. We can preview it. That looks good. We'll click OK. This is just an effect applied to a vector stroke. That's why you still see a straight line. So we have to expand it. We're going to go to Object. We'll go Expand Appearance like this. Now with this selected, we're going to go to Object, we're going to go to Pattern, and we're going to go to Make. And you could actually set that up as a keyboard shortcut, so you don't even have to go to this pull-down menu. You can set it to an F key, hit the F key, boom, you're going to be in pattern mode immediately like this. And you can see it defaults to tile type of a grid, and in this case, that's what we want. You don't have to touch anything. The pattern's done. You just have to name it. So we'll call this wavy pattern like that. It's done. And now we can hit the escape key to get back to our artboard like that. And that's how easy it is to create that pattern. We're going to create one more pattern, but this is just starting with a simple elliptical shape. Ultimately, the color we want this to be is orange. So let's go ahead and color this the orange fill color. And I'm going to clone this. Command-C, Command-F. If you have the contextual menu bar by default turned on, you could just select it and hit duplicate. I just don't like having that get in my way all the time, so I don't use it. I'm going to hold Shift down, drag this at a 45-degree angle, something like this, and I'm paying attention to the space in between it. I don't want it to be too tight. I want it to have a little bit of airiness, but not too much. So something like that. I'll clone this, Command-C, Command-F. I'll go to the Reflect tool, find a central anchor point. By the way, I have Smart Guides turned on. I toggle them on and off as needed. Command-U to toggle them on, Command-U to toggle it off. We're going to settle on this anchor, and I'm going to reflect it this way. And then I will select this one and clone this, Command-C, Command-F, use the Reflect tool, use the bottom anchor here, and reflect this over. Then I'm going to do the same thing on this one, and I'll clone it, go to the Reflect tool, find a central anchor here, and reflect it over. Now, why am I setting it up like this? Because it's going to make it easier to create the pattern we want. So I'm going to select these, go back to Object, go back to Pattern, go to Make. It's going to bring us into pattern tile mode. It's going to default to a grid. That's fine, but you can see this pattern isn't working because we need to adjust it. And this is an easy adjustment. Think of this preview as a bounding box. We're going to click the Pattern Tile tool, this button in the top left of the palette. We'll click it. It'll give you these controls, and the left side is fine and the right side is fine, but the top and bottom we need to adjust. So we'll pull this down and it'll snap to that shape. That's what we want. I'll pull this up and it'll snap to that shape, but we don't need two shapes here and here. We can get rid of one. So I'm going to get rid of this bottom one and delete it. So now you can see we have a perfect pattern going now. Wherever it goes on top comes in the bottom. Wherever it goes on the bottom comes in at the top. That's fine. So we'll name this, we'll call it Sun Dots, and we'll call it orange because that's the color, like that. And then we can hit Escape to get back to our desktop like this. We're all done making those patterns. You can see how tiny those were. That's why I wanted to zoom in. So let's go ahead and put these to use. We'll turn on the background. We'll turn on the artwork we're going to be applying it to. The first one we're going to apply to, and I'll slide this over a little bit so you can see the background blue here. I'll select that. It's on both sides of the owl. We're going to select this. We're going to go to the Appearance panel. Right now, here's the blue we have selected. We're going to add another fill color. It'll just copy what we have selected, and we're going to put in the wavy pattern here. And boom, we have a nice little pattern we've added to our artwork on each side. That looks good. Now we're going to utilize the pattern we created, the sun dot pattern. So I'm going to select the moon here, and we're going to go back to the Appearance panel. And the Appearance panel is like layers, but it gives you the ability to add effects. It gives you the ability to put multiple fills or multiple strokes on one single vector object. So this vector object of the moon is going to have two fills. The base is the fill color you see here, and we're just going to create a new fill, add another fill to it, that is, and we'll select this and we'll go halftone. And it adds our nice orange halftone, but we'll adjust the intensity And we don't want the value to be 100%, so we'll knock off just 5% shy of 50% value, like that, just to add that in there. That looks good. And now what I want to do is I want to create another halftone pattern, but because we have one created, all we have to do is go up into the Swatches panel, select the first one we made, and just go to the option menu and go duplicate, so it makes a duplicate. Double click into this one. We're going to change the name because this isn't going to be orange. We want this one to be white. And we'll just Command A to select our art, fill it with white. Once we have that done, we can hit escape. Now we have our second halftone pattern swatch. And this one I'm talking about, if you try to use grid repeat, you can mock up what looks to be a pattern, but it won't create a pattern swatch. Therefore, you can't click other shapes and fill it with the pattern. That's why just avoid that altogether and do it this way, and your life is going to be a lot easier. Why they designed that functionality to be that way, I have no idea. It's kind of really dumb. Let's select the background shape like this. We're going to clone this. So Command C, Command F. I just hit the F3 key to make a copy like that. And on this one itself, we're going to go ahead and turn on this layer, which is going to be a mask layer for opacity mask. And by the way, you don't have to do this on a separate layer. The only reason I do this is just so I can focus on it and explain it better and turn it on and off if I need to. But it does make it easier. Trying to do everything on one single layer is like really frustrating at times. So that's why I use layers a lot. So once I've turned that layer on, I'm going to drag this object from this layer to the mask layer and put it up here. All you want to do is you want to make sure that this, which we'll be using to create our opacity mask, is on top of the element we just brought to this layer. So to make sure it is, you'll just go to Object with it selected, go to Arrange, and go Bring to Front. Notice I have F5, so I can just hit F5. And now I'm just, for the purpose of not selecting the art underneath by accident, I'm going to lock that layer. And on this one, we don't need the outline. Let's go ahead and get rid of this. We're going to turn on our gradient because we're going to create a gradient here, specifically a linear gradient. Oh, not on the stroke. We want it on the fill. Make sure you have fill selected, hit linear gradient. And then once you have that, you can go to the gradient tool. This will give you the controls on the object, and this is where you can rotate it to whatever angle you want, reposition it. I think having this one here, I think it needs to be angled a little different like that. I think this needs to be up here, and then we'll pull this out. In my opinion, the old controls for this used to work way better than what they changed. I don't know why they changed stuff when nobody asked for changes, and then the stuff that needs to be changed, it's like they ignore it. Annoy it. No, see, that's a Freudian slip right there. They ignore it for years, and it annoys me, like the snapping bug, which they said they fixed towards the first of the year to me, and no, it's still around. They didn't fix it. I don't think it's ever going to get fixed. So something like that, I think that's fine. And by the way, if you're taking the exercise files for this movie, if you go to graphic styles, I put a prefabricated blend here. So I could have clicked this, but I just wanted to show you how to control the gradient tool. It's not hard. It's just we want this to be above the background shape that we made a copy and moved to this layer. So with both of those items selected, that is the gradient selected shape and the background shape, with both of those selected, let's drag out the transparency palette because this is where the magic happens. You can see it shows our mask here. So we want to click on Make Mask like this. And you're going, well, that just shows nothing but the blue. That's right, because you know what I forgot to do? I forgot to apply. So what we're going to do really quickly, this is real world creativity because I do this when I'm working even. I'm just going to go ahead and push this to the back really quick. We'll select this shape. My bad, I forgot to select this shape. Go to the fill here, and instead of the turquoise, we're going to fill it with the white halftone because that's what I wanted. But I don't want it at 100% value, so we're going to make this like 60%, like that, so it's not so stark. Then we'll bring our mask shape to the front again, and I just use F5 to do that. Now we can select both of our shapes here, and with both of these shapes selected, this is what I meant to do, but I was too busy talking and about Illustrator annoying me, and I forgot to do it. With both these selected, we'll just click Make Mask. And so what it does is it masks that halftone, and anywhere that's black within the mask shape, the gradient we created, black makes it opaque, and white is transparent, so that's where it shows through. And so you can see how it's now fading. Now, if you want to adjust how far it's fading, if you select the gradient tool, you have to select the mask itself, you can still edit it because this is just an effect being applied to a vector object. So it's fully editable. You can drag this up if you don't want that many dots showing, or you can drag it down, or you can go up here and adjust the mid-range and figure out if it looks better there, or you can bring this down more and bring it up. So it just depends on what look and feel, and I think that looks pretty good. So that's how we would mask a halftone like this. Now, when you have the mask area selected and you go, well, I'm going to check some of my layers, and you go over here and you go, whoa, where's my layers? Well, it won't show you the layers because you have the opacity mask selected. Just click on the preview one on the left and your layers reappear. So a lot of people kind of get freaked out about that. You're not doing anything wrong. That's just the way it works. So that's how I would add this kind of halftone to design like this. So I want to show you another way you can do some nice detailing, but using a more organic method. So again, we're going to use the same artwork. So I'll just turn on this. Oh, and by the way, I should point out, I did create another pattern, kind of a brick wall pattern, because it ties everything together, I think, nicely. So the next effect I want to show you is one where it takes Photoshop features that are embedded in Illustrator, and it's going to create a nice graininess. So let's jump into that. We're going to utilize the exact same artwork. So let's just turn on those layers. And on this owl artwork, we want to go ahead like we did in the first one, using a pattern we created to utilize in the background. We'll select the background. We'll make a copy of it, Command-C, Command-F. I just hit the F3 key shortcut, keyboard shortcut, and I'm going to fill it with a lighter hue. We'll turn on the opacity mask layer, and I'll move this to that layer. Now I want to make sure that the mask that I'm going to be creating is above this. So we'll go ahead and bring that to the front. I have that set up as another keyboard shortcut, F5, so I never have to go up to these pull-down menus. It just speeds the whole process up. Once again, watch my creating with keyboard shortcuts. We're going to kind of cheat here and use the graphic style I have pre-created here to apply that. This is the mask we want to use. And now with both of these, we want to go ahead and select them. And like we did before, we're going to click on Make Mask. Now, previously, first thing we want to do first is turn off the clip, because we want to be able to isolate the mask we've created here. And you can see it's doing much like it did with the halftone, but we can improve on this and add a little more organic flair. And that's what I want to do now. So what we're going to do is, instead of applying anything to our artwork as shown here and selected, we're going to select the mask itself, go to the appearance panel, and you can see it set up here. And in the appearance panel, I'll select fill, I'll go to effects, I'll go to texture, and I'm going to go to grain. Now, when I click on this, it's going to overtake your screen with this. And if I go to the bottom left here, you can zoom in if you want to see this better, and you can adjust this so you see how it's affecting it. But here you can see its grain. This doesn't look very good in my opinion, so there's a bunch of different ones here. I usually find stippled works best for what we're going to do here, and so you can see how it gets kind of coarse. Now if we zoom out a bit like that, you can see that's okay, but it's almost like all mid values, and so we want to adjust the intensity, and we want to also adjust the contrast as well. So on the intensity, it's only 10. We're going to go all the way up to like 60 here. And on the contrast, and you can see how it's adjusting over here. I think it already looks better, but I think the contrast can be improved to get rid of some of that banding. Like that, like 10, I think would look good. And that looks great. So that's all you have to do. Now we're going to click OK. And what it's going to do is it's going to apply that effect to that vector gradient object. And you can see it's doing that right now. Now, to really appreciate this, let's zoom in. You can see how it gets nice and coarse. And that's the look and feel we wanted. And just like you could with the halftone, you can adjust this after the fact. So if you have it selected and you go to the gradient tool, maybe you want that graininess to go further down. And by the way, when you adjust it, if you see this and you go, I almost like this better, but unfortunately you can't adjust the graininess. It would be nice if you could make it even coarser. I think it'd look better. But if you see this is just a preview bug. As soon as you let go of it, it'll redraw it. Now, if you don't like seeing that, it's an easy fix. Just go up to View and go View with CPU. That way, when you make adjustments, it'll show you the change, but it won't kind of wig out like that. That kind of upsets people. You can bring this up again. So it's fully editable. So maybe you don't want it to go down so far. You could do something like this. You know, you could adjust the mid-value range. You could bring this back up. So it's fully editable, even though it's an effect, a graininess effect being applied to your overall artwork. I think it'd look better having it come up a little bit, something like that. So that's how you can add a nice kind of graininess to your overall design or illustration. Again, you don't lose your layers, but if you have this selected, you won't see them. So let's click back on the preview layer. That way we get access to all of the layers. Now I use this same effect to add some graininess to the windows. So you can see that there. And we did it to the window frame as well. So here we put a little shading. We did some on the owl and the moon itself, so you can see that. Now, one thing I'll point out on the owl is this shape here that we've added that shading to. If I bring it over, it's this muted value. Well, it's a muted value of the base color orange. We'll move it back because with that muted value, you can see it up here in the swatches panel, is we're going to go to the transparency palette. We're going to set this to multiply. And then we don't want 100%. Let's knock off 15 to 85. And it creates a nice shading value like that. And of course, we have some of the graininess up here in his head. We've added it to the moon. I think that looks good. And we also added it to the background on the wall itself. So that's how you can use this effect to add that type of graininess to your artwork. Let's jump to one more thing. Once you, when I create a design like this, as much as I like this design, I like the owl a lot. And I made sure to save a copy of my artwork before I embedded the moon and the window, etc., into it, so I could just isolate that owl. So if we turn on this, you can see I've isolated this owl, and this would make a pretty cool brand pattern. So what I'm going to do is select this, and again, we'll go to Object, we'll go down to Pattern, and we'll go Make, and we're just going to adjust this really quickly. So it's going to work better. It's going to always default to a grid tile type. In this case, we're going to go brick by column, because that way we can kind of tuck them into one another and improve the overall layout. We'll click the tile tool here, and that'll give us the controls we need to, like, for example, pull in the sides because we want this to get a little tighter between the artwork like that. And then definitely on the top, we want to pull in the sides as well to bring it in like right about there, just so it's in a tighter format. We'll go over here. Maybe we'll call this one owl pattern color, like that. And once you have that done, we can click escape to go back to the desktop. Let's go ahead and put this pattern to use. I'll unlock this layer. I'll select this. This is the whole background is white. It's a white fill. And all we're going to do is we're going to replace that with the pattern we just created. Boom, like that. Now, whatever size you create your pattern is the size it will tile out. So if you think this is too big, you can go to the scale tool, double click on it, double click on the scale tool. Make sure you turn off transform objects. You don't want to transform the object you filled with the pattern. You just want to transform the pattern itself. And on this one, we'll go 55 to make it smaller. You can click preview and you can see what we get there. I think that looks pretty good. We can go ahead and close these. Actually, let's just put them back where they go, down here like that, so they're not in our way anymore. And I think that looks pretty good overall. We're going to make a copy of this though. So I'm going to duplicate this and I'm going to call this next one pattern 2. Like that. And on this, I'm going to go up here to the swatches. So here's our owl pattern we first had. Oops, I accidentally filled it. Let's not do that. Deselect the shape before we click on this. We want to duplicate this swatch again. So we're going to duplicate it. We're going to click into this. And on this one, I'm just going to call this one white. Like that. I think this artwork looks pretty good. I'm going to select everything minus the black. And let's go ahead and go to Pathfinder. We'll go Unite. And we'll select this. We'll go minus front. And we're going to color this white so you won't even be able to see it now. And let's go ahead and escape to the desktop. So we're back on the desktop. Here's the first pattern we did. We're going to go in here and we're going to add another fill color. And on this fill color, we're going to make this orange. And that doesn't look bad like that if you wanted to have an orange background, but I'm going to fill this with this pattern with the white, but I don't want it that stark. So I'm going to go in on this white and we're going to make it transparent, only 25% value, like that. So it's almost like a watermark type look. And then this would look great if we bring in our original logo, color it white, lock it up with some type. So a lot you can do with these simple pattern methods. Now in Adobe Illustrator, combine it with other effects like simple pattern creation to add detail to your illustration or design, or the graininess. Now, if you want to learn how to make more complex repeat patterns again that aren't simply a singular vector object like we did in this movie, make sure to check out my other comprehensive pattern movies on my channel, such as one titled Creating a Complex Pattern, or another one titled Creating a Custom Repeat Pattern. Once you learn the principles in those movies, you'll be able to create any type of pattern you want. So make sure to watch those. I really like the effects functionalities in Illustrator, but that said, I'd still love to see Adobe update a lot of these features and make them easier to integrate into vector artwork. It would be nice to have them forward-facing instead of hidden in pull-down menus and pop-up windows, because these features were developed decades ago and they haven't much changed since they were first developed, so they could use a lot of love, in my opinion. I really want to thank those who have become members of the People of Process channel. Your support helps me to create new content and to further help you. I will be creating a members-only webpage on my website where I'll post resources you can access and download at any time. I'll let all members know once I have that finalized. Until next time, thank you again for watching People of Process, and as always, I hope this content helps you improve your own creative process.